were really looking also at which models make the most sense. And so there was a couple of different models that were really popular at that time that they looked into. That are basically just people's ideas or theories about how relationships develop. And so the main ones that they were looking into were social exchange theory, which is kind of like the most cited one at that time. And it's pretty much saying that like whether a relationship succeeds or fails has to do with like what are the parts of their partner that they find attractive and what rewards do they get from that relationship, kind of balanced with how difficult it is to leave the relationship and then what their other options are. And so it's kind of looking at things from like how satisfied people are in the relationship and how stable as like two separate metrics. And so like you can be like satisfied and unstable or unsatisfied and stable, like and just kind of how whatever quadrant you fall into, how that impacts your relationship. So that's one that they were looking at. They also looked at behavioral theory. So a lot of that is like how people weigh their options and like how the comparison that you make with your partner to other potential mates, like how that impacts your own thinking about your relationship and how the thoughts that you have about that like lead to subsequent thoughts in the relationship. It's not really taking into account the environment a lot. So that's kind of a limitation of that theory. And then they looked at attachment theory, which is something that I work in a lot. And that really has to do with your relationship as a child with your parent and how that influenced like what your needs and patterns are as an adult. And then the last one that they looked at was crisis theory, which is pretty much just looking specifically at like what happens when challenges rise and like why some people's relationships deteriorate after like crises and some get better. Because usually it's one of those two, like people either usually become really close or the relationship becomes like quite a struggle. And so that's really looking at like why that is. It's a little bit more niche than the other ones.